My name's Chelsea, and this is my first video for my YouTube channel. The whole reason I've started this YouTube channel is because I have anxiety. I don't have it to the extent that I used to have it, but I definitely still have it. It's still there. So I want you to know that if you experience pins and needles, if you experience dizziness, if you experience hyperventilation or shortness of breath, if you experience getting shaky hands, or if you experience, even just if you experience biting your nails, or even if you just experience that little butterfly feeling before you go into an exam, or even if you experience a need to put pressure on yourself and a need to perform so highly, otherwise you'll let yourself down or you'll let somebody else down. If you experience any of those symptoms, you have anxiety too, and that's not an insult. That's not me trying to have a go at you. Anxiety is such a common thing in our society, and especially my generation. And I'm trying to change the social stigma behind it. I'm trying to change how we can express it to each other and to ourselves, because it's okay to have anxiety. I know that sometimes it gets to the point where it's hard to deal with. Trust me, I know. I know sometimes it gets to the point where you feel like you've lost total control, but there is a way to gain control again. I know this through personal experience. The reason I've started this YouTube channel is because I want people to be able to talk about anxiety more. I don't want you to feel ashamed to tell people how you feel. I don't want you to feel ashamed because you feel like you need to be isolated from society because you don't fit into their description of normal anymore. I'm so passionate about communicating this message. I'm so passionate about letting you know you're not alone. I'm so passionate about helping people through this. And I want to do this by sharing my own experience. I want to do this by telling you how I got through anxiety, how I incorporated it into my life. So whether you're somebody who's going through anxiety yourself and you need a little bit of guidance, or you just want somebody to tell you that you're not alone, then that's what I'm here for. Or if you're somebody that is trying to support somebody going through anxiety, I'm here to help you develop your understanding of what it really is, your understanding of how you can help them. For anxiety, it's such a mental thing, obviously. It's a chemical imbalance in our brain, and it may seem like it's hard to control. It may seem like your brain has overtaken your life and there's no going back, but I'm letting you know there definitely is a way through it. So my first video is about sharing my personal experience with you with anxiety. So try and make a long story as short as I can. Growing up, I always felt the need to be perfect. I always put so much pressure on myself to reach this impossible ideal of perfect. This impossible ideal that I had to be the best at everything. And you know what? The sad thing is, even being the best was never enough. Even getting straight A's was not enough. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel anything when I achieved what I set my mind to. That was all through school. That was all through every sporting venture I joined, whether it was dance, hockey, whatever. And if I wasn't the best, I'd give up because I didn't want to admit that I wasn't the best. Then I went into uni into quite a difficult course, and same thing. If I got straight 7s and my GPA was perfect, I expected that of myself. So if I saw 7s, I'd be like, oh yeah, cool, move on. Like, no emotion, just what I expected. But if I got a 6 or anything less than perfect, instantly be so mad at myself and feel like my whole world had came crashing down. So I always had this stupid idea of perfection. We all know perfection doesn't exist. So after that, I started to notice little things creep into my life through my first year of uni that had never been there before, that were totally unfamiliar territory and made me question who I was. Because the person who I thought I was and who I thought I had been my whole life was someone who was completely confident. I'd always been a dancer, always performed in front of so many people that I had this confidence about myself. But for the first time ever, that had completely changed. I went to a dance class in my first year of uni, like I'd done a million times, and when it came time to perform in front of everybody, I got so dizzy. My heart was racing, and the whole room was spinning, and I had to sit down. I obviously, being such a control freak for most of my life, put this down to, oh no, I probably just didn't drink enough water. I probably just have low blood sugar. No big deal. I'm going to move past that. So I went home that night and pretended like nothing happened. Didn't tell anybody about it, just moved on. After that, I started to experience other unfamiliar territory things come up in my life. I'd always relished in alone time. I loved solitude. I love reading a book in the corner. I love being home alone and dancing in the kitchen. I've always loved that solitude. But for the first time ever, I started to hate being alone. I was so afraid every time I was alone. I was living with my partner at the time, and every time he'd go to work, at night he'd always have to work late, and I was terrified. I would try and distract myself by watching a movie or by cooking in the kitchen, but I couldn't get this voice out of my head that made me question whether I was okay. I noticed myself suddenly feeling the need to check my pulse to make sure I wasn't dying, to make sure I was still alive, to make sure I was okay. All of these experiences started creeping into my life, and I was so confused. I was terrified. This person who I thought I was my whole life had suddenly morphed into somebody who was terrified to be alone, who was dependent on others, who didn't feel comfortable in her own skin. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what this was. I had no idea what was going on. I don't think anxiety is spoken about enough. I don't think we're educated on what it really is, how you can experience it. That so many of us experience it and we have no idea what's happening. And that's a big reason why I'm here today sharing my story. As confronting as it may seem, I think it's essential. So after those experiences started creeping up into my life, I kind of hit crisis point. I call it my crisis point, where I deferred uni because I'd just broken up with my long-term partner. I had just quit my job and I just moved cities. Because everything in my life sort of came crashing down at this one point. So not long after that, I experienced my first panic attack. And for some of you who have experienced panic attacks yourselves, I'm sure you know what it feels like. And I hope that we can assimilate here. So for me, I spent that day a little bit more unsure. I was dizzy. I was at the shops. I didn't feel safe, and all of this was totally unfamiliar. I went home and I was alone. I just went to my kitchen and I had this extreme fear come over my whole body. I had no idea where it came from. It was as if a lion had just entered my house and was about to pounce on me and rip me apart. That's how it felt. But there was nothing there, and it just came out of nowhere. I got extremely dizzy. I was extremely short of breath. My heart was pounding extremely fast, and I felt like I couldn't get air in. I started to hyperventilate. I passed out. That's my first experience with panic attack. I'm sure some of you know how it feels, but for me, it was the most afraid I have been in my whole life. I felt like I was dying. I felt like I was having a heart attack. I was terrified. The ambulance came and they checked all my vital signs and told me everything was fine. That was the first time somebody had suggested to me that this could be anxiety. Being the control freak I was and never accepting myself to be anything less than perfect, anything less than what is expected of me, I fobbed it off and I was like, I couldn't have anxiety. That's ridiculous. Like, I'm this high achiever that goes a million miles an hour. I don't have time for this. Like, I don't have anxiety. But then, after that night, it kept happening. I experienced another panic attack while I was driving. I was driving along the road by myself in the car, and everything became blurry, and I felt like I wasn't in my body anymore. I felt like I was kind of floating. I pulled over onto the side of the road, and it gradually got worse. I got pins and needles in my face, which spread to the rest of my whole body, and I couldn't move. I couldn't move my hands. I believe they call it tetany, when your hands sort of go stiff from hyperventilation. So that happened, and the ambulance came again. Once again, thought I was dying. It was a terrible experience for me, as I'm sure a lot of you know. And again, he said, you experience hyperventilation, you have anxiety. And I couldn't accept it. And I just want to say, and I want to make a point of this, that if somebody has told you that you're experiencing anxiety or suggested to you that that could be a possibility, first of all, if you're anything like me and you're a bit of a high achiever, you expect a lot of yourself, it is hard. It is hard to accept that you have this thing in your life that has control over your body. You have this thing in your life that has control over your mind. That was so hard for me to accept. And to be honest, it took probably a solid 2 weeks for me to process it. I had to kind of, in a way, block off my family, block off the paramedics, block off the doctors, block off my friends, and just sit with myself and process. I did so much research on anxiety, so much research on the symptoms it can cause. And I got to a point of acceptance. It took a while, but that's okay. If you're struggling accepting that that's what you're experiencing, I want you to know you're not alone in that, okay? It was so hard for me to accept that. But the sooner you accept it, the sooner you're able to get through it. The sooner you're able to get help to overcome it, whatever that help may be, because I know that we all get through it in different ways. But that was a big, big, big step for me, was acceptance. And I just want you to know that it's okay. Don't be so hard on yourself. We all go through anxiety. We all have it at different levels, sure. We all experience it at different severity, of course. But it's okay to have it. You're normal. You're not some crazy person that's totally isolated from society and that will not be accepted because you're experiencing these foreign things. I want you to know that for this video and for the rest of my videos, I want to share experiences. I want to share feelings. I want to share with you some maybe confronting things, but real things, because anxiety is real. What you're experiencing is real, and what you're experiencing is okay. And that's what I hope to achieve through this channel. So I hope today we made a start with that, and I hope you keep tuning in.